That we're talking about today.
Used to exhausted on Monday. I don't know how long now it's been exhausted. Friday.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to the Planning Advisory Committee meeting. Do we have any declarations of pecuniary interest? No? Okay. So the number 3, the adoption of the minutes.
It is moved by Ann Tessier and seconded by Dan Gagné. Be it resolved that the agenda for the West Nipissing Planning Advisory Committee meeting held on September the 12th, 2023 be adopted as presented.
Everybody had it. Call it to a vote.
No, we can't close it. No, you can't close it.
Thank you. Number 4, the minutes, the adoption of the minutes.
It is moved by Danielle Seguin and seconded by Roxanne Louis. Whereas a public meeting was... It is moved by Roxanne Louis and seconded by Ann Tessier. Be it resolved that the minutes of the West Nipissing Planning Advisory Committee meeting held on the 13th of July, 2023 be adopted as presented.
I think that everybody had a chance to read the minutes. If everybody is in favor, do you have a question?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm Mark as president. I wasn't here.
Okay, thank
You.
you very much. Noted. So as amended.
Amended. Okay, so I'll call it to a vote. Everybody in favor? All right, carried. Okay, the zoning bylaw amendment application 5.1, Sean Larcher for 900 Canal Road.
It is moved by Danielle Seguin and seconded by Roxanne Louis. Whereas a public meeting was held on September 12th for the purpose of amending zoning bylaw 2014-45, and whereas written concerns and objections have been received to the proposed amendment, be it resolved that the Planning Advisory Committee for the West Nipissing Municipality recommends or does not recommend that Council for the West Nipissing Municipality adopt the proposed zoning bylaw to rezone a portion of the rezone the property at 900 Canal Road, and more particularly shown on the attached sketch, and that Schedule H2 of Bylaw 2014-45 shall be amended by changing the zoning designation from shoreline residential with a hazard overlay to tourist commercial with a hazard overlay.
All right.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll just give a brief preamble. This application came before the committee on July. It was not recommended. Subsequent to that, we did receive correspondence, and pursuant to the Planning Act, an applicant has the opportunity to change the application up until such time as an actual decision is made, which would be a council decision. That was accepted by council at its meeting in August, and the application was amended and subsequently recirculated to the same circulation as the prior application, with the amendment that rather than a shoreline residential special zone, what was being requested is a tourist commercial zone.
All right. I remember it as being a commercial tourist zone. So do we have any questions from our panel?
I got a few. First of all, it used to be tourist, and it went to shoreline residential.
That's correct.
Is there many other parcels like on that stretch of road that actually have gone to the same, under the same,
To commercial?
back to commercial? And then is it possible for other shoreline residential that weren't commercial before to actually revert to this? In other words, like,
So the first question, the first one, I don't have the answer for off the top of my head. I don't believe there has been any new applications for tourist commercial on Canal Road that I'm aware of, in the recent past anyways. And any property that would want to change their zoning would have to go through the same process as being undertaken here. And obviously go through the public consultation process.
Question number 3 is, once this gets a rubber stamp, if this lot does go this way, a few years later down the road, is there a possibility of this lot being severed in two, again with a dwelling on it, because it doesn't meet as far as the size that would be required?
Well, there's nothing, through you, Mr. Chair, there's nothing to preclude someone from applying, but it would not meet the lot area nor frontage for a severance.
Which it doesn't now.
Oh, it does actually meet the lot area for the tourist commercial zone, yes.
Is there any intention of any actual commercial operations going on here?
Maybe, it is not my understanding, but I believe that Mr. Larche's consultant is here and you may want to direct the question. It's my understanding that the intent is still the same as the original application, which is to build a second dwelling for the purpose of rental.
Hi, thanks very much.
Yeah, one of the problems with the initial application was that it could allow for short-term rentals. I understand you're also considering your short-term rental bylaw coming up later in this agenda. So when Mr. Larche came to us, we suggested to him, if you're looking at doing something of a more commercial nature, whether these are longer-term rentals or shorter-term rentals, one of the big issues with short-term rentals, the Airbnbs, whatever, is they're totally unregulated. And when they're in residential neighborhoods in an unregulated manner, where they're not paying the commercial taxes, it makes an unfair situation for your commercial operators. Through COVID, a lot of municipalities have lost their tourist commercial operations. Many of them shut down during that period of time. They just could no longer afford to stay in business. So right now, yes, the immediate intention is to build the second residence, which will be rented out. And depending on the rental periods, it could be short-term, could be longer-term. I know Mr. Sharma has recommended that we limit it through a special zone category to just the one additional rental unit on the property. However, the property, we are seeking tourist commercial. We will be paying tourist commercial taxes to the municipality. And just from a business perspective, we would prefer to see it left a little more open. Now, there's a number of different uses that are permissible under the tourist commercial. And if we need to limit some of the uses that may be a little more impactful on some of the neighbors, I think we're open to that discussion. But really, so for example, if there were additional rental cabins to be constructed in the future, this is traditionally a tourist commercial type of operation. Docking space, the property has frontage on the Sturgeon River. We are in an area where there's at least 4 or 5 other tourist commercial operations in close proximity to this site. And in fact, this site was the former Nippersing Lodge for many, many years. It was always a tourist commercial operation. It wound up being severed sometime, well, not that long ago, and split up when the original lodge was falling into disrepair and broken up. So when Mr. Larche approached us about it, we said, well, you know, because we weren't involved in the initial application for the special zone category under the residential shoreline designation, we said, well, let's do this right. We'll put it back to a tourist commercial zone. If we have to have some form of a special component, that's fine. There are certain uses that, you know, that are permissible in a tourist commercial that clearly just won't fit on this site. Like we're allowed a golf course, but we've got 1.5 acres, so even I'd be able to hit the greens on that golf course, I think. So, so some of the, you know, a trailer park, is one use that we would be willing to take off the table. But a convenience store, which would benefit the entire neighborhood, usually it's done to support the people that are there renting at the time, but it could also benefit the neighborhood as well. That could stay. A restaurant is a permissible use under the tourist commercial because many lodges do also have a restaurant component to them. So we would like to see a more expanded tourist commercial to give Monsieur Larcher the opportunity to expand somewhat in the future. The expansion is going to be limited by the size of the property, which right now does meet the minimum area, well, exceeds the minimum area and frontage requirements, so he has no issue that way. But of course, the septic systems would be probably the controlling factor for the number of additional rental units that could be installed on the property. And that would all be governed through the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority. So we're not looking at putting 100 new cabins on the site. We just wouldn't have the septic capacity to be able to handle that. So I think the numbers would be controlled more from the septic capacity of the property than by any other feature. And right now, tourist commercial, it's left like there is no limit on the number of short-term rental units that could be put on a tourist commercial property. But like I say, that is typically limited by the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority and the septic capacity of the lot. They just wouldn't get approval for an expanded septic system that would support the additional units. But they should have the opportunity to be able to expand in the future to that if Mr. Larcher wishes to continue moving forward with this.
Thank you, Paul. I think Kathleen, you had a,
Oh, I may have some follow-up questions.
yeah.
Yeah, just a question. So that new building they want to build, is that going to be like used for winter as well? Is it going to be
As far as I know, yes.
so that
Yep.
winter season as well? So you get the winter tourism like snowmobile and all that to add to that
Yep.
tourism
Yes.
area.
It would be fully insulated.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So if I'm understanding this correctly, the first time it came to us under residential, and we denied it, correct? Because the area was not big enough for two dwellings, right? So now they're coming to us and they're saying, well, okay, how about we change it to tourist commercial so that they're able to put two dwellings, correct? So to me, is that not just in a sense of circumventing what we're said no to the first time around so that we allow it to happen? And a year and a half from now, they come back and say, well, hey, let's put it back to residential, and then they get what they wanted. However, I'm not saying that we would approve that, and I understand that portion. But what's stopping them from saying, okay, we're gonna do it tourist commercial, and it's a family member that lives there, and they never do rent it out. Yes, they might, I assume, I'm not 100% sure on the tax portion, that the taxes are probably higher, and they'd be willing to pay the tax, but at the end of the day, they're still gonna get their second dwelling on that lot. Am I correct in assuming that?
The net result would be the same as what was originally applied for.
Okay, so basically, it's just a way of circumventing the decision that we had made at first.
I don't see it that way myself. I see it as doing it within the rules as established by the zoning bylaw. The same way that any other tourist commercial operator up and down that same road has the opportunity to do right now. And in fact, it gives them the opportunity to even expand beyond the two on the one lot, as long as the septic capacity is there.
But the ones on that road right now are already tourist commercial, correct?
The ones that have that zoning.
The ones that are designated, and that's what I mean. So, and I would agree with you if there's individuals on that road that are residential that would ask the same thing, right? And at that point, that's where I think us as a committee would have to look at and say, well, okay, what's the validity to it? And I'm not saying that by no means, I don't mean that he is not looking at doing something commercial. I don't dispute that. However, it's hard to see it when we said no to the last time, and then they come around and say, well, hold on, then let's change it so we can have a second dwelling. You know what I mean? And
If,
I don't want to be the pessimist, but that's how I'm seeing it right now.
oh, I can understand that. If Mr. Larche had come to us in the first place, we probably would have directed him towards this and right off the bat. I see my partner has a comment to make towards that as well.
Just a quick comment is stating that the reason that there's a second dwelling that was not allowed is because it's SR. That's why it was refused. It's not residential, it's shoreline residential. You're not allowed to build a second unit. So your refusal was because of the zoning that you have on that, excuse me, on that land. What he was asking was a special SR, which you're absolutely right, that would set precedence. This is going to commercial tourist, which is up and down there, which the land was before.
Yeah, I just want to, add a comment to you, Mr. Chair. I did visit the property after we had the planning, and the intent that Mr. Larcher explained was for commercial. There's 2 trailer lots, and there's also a sign at the road with his business sign. So to me, right there, it indicates that his direction was to go to commercial. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, so sorry, and just a comment, not necessarily a question. If the intent is commercial, then I 100% support any additional business that we can bring into our community for sure. But hopefully people understand that's not how it was presented the first time. So that's why it's hard for myself, and I won't speak on behalf of everybody else here, for myself to say, you know, then yes. But if Councillor Tacey did attend and there's a sign and she feels, and then that's her vision, then that's great. And if that's really the intent, by all means. But again, like I said earlier, it was just hard to see when the first time it's presented to us differently, right?
Yeah, I'll just, through you, Mr. Chair. I think one of the issues is not just that it's shoreline residential. It is, but the fact is that detached accessory dwellings are not allowed on shoreline residential. The lot itself is too small to sever because it would fall under the 0.4 hectare. So he cannot have 2 lots with individual houses on each. I'm just collecting your thoughts here. Now, as far as my concern is that the proposal as it's presented here does not really show a change in intent. It actually, as Councillor St. Louis has indicates basically the same plan and just finding a different path to get to the end of the maze. And so I like Councillor St. Louis, I'm not too certain about that. Now, when it goes to commercial, if it was to go to C3 zone, the taxes would be increased.
I'm not I wouldn't, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, I wouldn't want to comment on that because I think there's a threshold in number of dwellings before it actually hits the commercial. Zoning and taxes, zoning and assessment aren't exactly in tandem. And I wouldn't want to comment because that's out of my bailiwick.
Okay, so.
But the
So what you're saying
assessment,
is,
the assessment in tax in commercial is higher than the assessment of residential.
That is correct.
And the assessment also, if I may add, is based upon the value that's on the lot. The more structures you add to the lot, the higher the value, the higher the taxes.
okay, would there be anything hypothetically preventing the applicant from gaining the C3 zoning, building the detached accessory dwelling that he initially intended and coming back here a year from now and asking to be reverted back to shoreline residential in order to avoid the additional taxes that may or may not be levied on a C3.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's nothing ever to stop someone from applying, period. It would be whether or not, now typically, I would say typically down zoning is usually more, it is viewed more favorably than up zoning. But there would be nothing to say, I couldn't stop, I couldn't refuse an application. Would have to go through the normal course, the same as anything else.
Do you know the date at which the property in question last operated as to like actually operated, or when the zoning was changed with the amalgamation?
No, what happened was the property was, it fell into disrepair. It was not in operation when I started here. The building was falling down. So it was purchased, I think it was purchased around 2007-ish by a local landowner who subsequently severed it and I think refurbished the building that is now, I think it's a home. In 2014, when we undertook the comprehensive zoning bylaw, at that time, we matched the zoning to the use at the time, unless there was a specific request to leave it. So at the time that we did the new zoning bylaw, there were residential uses on one side and the other side was vacant. So both were designated shoreline residential in the new zoning bylaw.
It's actually split up back in 1998 is when we did the survey to split it.
Oh, long before that, sorry.
But then it, like you said, though, it didn't get rezoned, I think, until the current 2014 bylaw.
But there's been no commercial activity on it for a long, long time.
Yeah, I'm not sure when the commercial actually ceased on the property.
Okay, thank you.
But like I said, the commercial had existed for many, many years prior to that. So it had been commercial for far longer than it has not been commercial. And the commercial zoning still stayed in place until 2014. So had they just decided to object to the 2014 bylaw and said, no, we'd like to keep this as commercial at the time, it probably would have remained as commercial. Or if they moved forward with a commercial enterprise at the time.
And
I just want to make a comment that if Monsieur Larcher would have submitted his application for a tourist commercial, it would have been accepted because he's meeting all criteria. So that's the only comment I'd like to make. Thank you.
any more questions?
Just one more comment. The owner that split it was actually running commercial out of it because he had his barges and all that were there till the end. So that's something else that comes into factor.
And the same with me, if I can add. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair. I have a question when you're finished.
If I have the same sentiment as Ann and Dan, as if you're going to continue with this, go commercial, and then at least nobody else can say you're illegal of what you're doing. So, and to, like, I don't like to stop development. So that's my take of it also. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Goodridge, you had indicated that you were not, my recommendation was that the permitted uses be limited to the accessory dwelling. You had indicated that you would want.
Well,
So-
the application was to turn it over to a C3 zone category, period. Now, I understand there may be some uses that may not be as acceptable to the neighborhood as others, but there's still, if we limit it just to the accessory dwelling, then it speaks exactly to what committee member San Luis has brought up, that basically it then becomes just an end run. It's not the intention. So we want that opportunity, and especially if he's going to be paying the commercial taxes, he should have the right to operate it as a commercial enterprise. And as Councilor Tessier has pointed out, also, he has Now, whether the sign at this point is legal or not without the commercial zoning, that's a different story, but I'm glad he showed his intention and his confidence. But that's what we're here to do, is to create this as a commercial. So if there are a couple of trailer sites, but I'm not talking about filling the entire site up just with trailers. And once again, it comes down to the septic capacity of the lot for what can or can't be done on the site. So I think that's more the limiting factor than anything else.
Yeah.
So it would be in this committee's purview to determine whether or not they wish to limit the uses, the tourist commercial uses. The tourist commercial uses, I'll just briefly, there's not that many of them. Trailer park, tourist establishment, tourist camping establishment, restaurant, recreational establishment, outdoor use, active and passive, motel, hotel, mobile food service, marine sales establishment, marina, housekeeping cottages, hotel, and existing dwelling. So those are the permitted commercial uses.
Oh, and golf course.
No, actually, it's not. It's not a,
Isn't it? I thought it was
no,
in there.
no golf course.
I do have another question on this here. With the second dwelling that wants to be built, would it be using the same septic, or is it going to be separate septic?
I believe it's a separate septic for the second dwelling, because otherwise you would have to upsize. Now, you can, like, if it's all on the same property, you can use one septic,
Yes.
but that, once again, gets controlled by the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority. So if they feel there's sufficient capacity in the existing, then they can put, drain into the same tank. If they don't, then a septic system is required.
True intent is to go commercial. You probably want to maximize your septic capacity. And then after that, well, my question is going is if you actually have one big septic for all of your uses, then after that, that lot stays in one lot.
Yes.
And if you're going to have two separate septics, eventually that lot can come back for another application here and have it severed again and just went around the back door to get this done. But
Well, we still, if we come back for any further severances of this lot, we're about 1.6 acres, I think, in total right now, so really, we don't qualify for a severance of the lot.
right,
So at that point in time, it comes back through the committee. They do have the right to apply for a minor variance, but it's unlikely. The official plan also states that for waterfront properties, the minimum lot size permissible would be 1 acre. And right now, the requirement is actually for 1 hectare. So to reduce it beyond to less than 1 acre is also contrary to the official plan.
correct. Unless an addition gets put in addition to the lot.
Well, yeah, if somebody purchased all the land in the back, we still have the issue of frontage requirement though also.
Yeah.
But yeah, that could be a potential.
Definitely.
Just one other concern with changing the zoning here is right now the property, according to our mapping here, is flanked on both sides by shoreline residential properties. And so the impact that could have on the neighboring properties, one of the lots is quite small. 1.6 acres is also quite small for any kind of tourist commercial operation. So even with, appropriate setbacks, I'm just concerned that depending on what the future looks like, would be negatively impacting the residents at both 910 and 888 Canal Road, which abut this property directly, and it's all shoreline residential there.
Okay.
For you, but that was the reason that I had made my recommendation that we limit the uses on the property, was to minimize the impact. So again, it's within this committee's purview to make a recommendation as to what or which not uses in the tourist commercial zone would be acceptable in this amendment.
Or one other avenue too, the although site plan control agreements have been removed by the province from residential properties, putting this into a tourist commercial zone still allows for a site plan control agreement to be registered. So not only could the uses be regulated, but also the number within that use category. So you could then, through site plan control, limit the number of rental cabins to a maximum of 6, or whatever the agreed upon number would be. But it is one way to do it without having to specifically remove items.
Something you can add there.
That is entirely within this site plan control, though we would still have to determine if we're leaving it wide open, then it would be up to this committee to determine what would you want to see in the site plan control. And I don't know if we have time for that tonight, but by removing some of the higher intensity uses from the zone, it does at least limit the disruption to the neighbors. If uses such as trailer park or hotel or motel, restaurant, those uses were removed. But again, it's I think that Councillor Tracy,
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So the size of the septic system, is there a maximum size to put on a lot? And would that maximum size allow X number of cabins or trailers? So what would be the maximum, if you know?
typically, size of septic tanks are dictated by the number of bedrooms, is usually how they, so the number of bedrooms dictates the size of the field bed. So when you get a field bed, you would have a building plan that would accompany it so they can size it appropriately. Typically wouldn't just put it's usually the septic's not first.
And usually if you're looking at a larger size bed, now to Dan's point, one big bed is probably cheaper than building 6 or 7 small beds for each of them. And so when you're designing the one big bed, they look at the capacity of the soils in the area, they look at the height of the water table, they look at whether you're having to bring fill material in. That all goes into the calculation. And then in addition to the bedrooms are the sort of fixtures that get added. So if there are jacuzzi tubs being put in each of the rental cabins, of course, that bumps up the septic requirement as well. So it depends on what type of structures are being built, the number of bedrooms, the number of fixtures, and then of course, just simply the soil capacities. And that's where I think through site plan control, because at least with site plan control, if you want to make changes, then it comes back before the municipality because it's an agreement between the municipality and the landowner. It's registered on title, and it also binds any future owner to that same agreement as well. So if the agreement initially says 4 cabins and the owner says, well, I'm having a great year, I'd like to build a 5th, well, then that's an amendment to the agreement. It comes back to the municipality and you have an opportunity to review it at that point in time.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Although Mr. Goodrich is making a point about site plan control, we have the ability at this table to do site-specific zoning, where we can say X number, we can do that without site plan control. The zoning bylaw can say 3 cabins only, or 5 cabins only, or we have the ability to say what can and cannot be done at the zoning level without the site plan control. Site plan control is typically more for the aesthetics, like landscaping and buffering and lighting and things like that. But zoning can be site specific and can be as nitty gritty as, no more than 5 cabins of no more than 750 square feet. That is something that could be done if the committee had such a desire to do.
Just so that.
It's all good. I see where this is going.
Go ahead, Ann.
So right now you're requesting to build 1 cabin, let's say, right? So would we be able to say that the maximum cabins would be one, as an example?
In addition to I think there's already one dwelling on the property.
Yeah, the dwelling
So-
plus the one they want to build.
That was my recommendation in my, was that the zoning be limited to one accessory dwelling.
The only problem there is though, it's not truly a commercial zone. It's now a rental property zone. It's not a commercial zone. And he still pays the same taxes as every other commercial operator would in the municipality, or at least the same rate as any other commercial operator, but he would be severely constrained as to what he could or couldn't do on the property. The point of the tourist commercial is to give Mr. Larche the ability to expand that operation. And as you've noted, he's already advertised for potential of a couple of trailer sites on the property. He could put docking facilities along the river, rent out dock spaces. But if we unnecessarily limit it to just one single rental unit, it really isn't much of a commercial operation. And then it gets perceived as being, like has been said, an end run around the system.
Sorry, Indiana, that's exactly where I was gonna add. Like I said earlier, I'm fully supportive of tourism and commercial. However, if we're gonna put a restriction of only one additional building, that's basically proving my point that we're just going around and to allow him to have what he wanted first. So if he is truly looking at tourist and commercial, then I think we need to probably allow him to have more than one. I'm not saying have 5, 6, 7, because I guarantee you that the people living in those areas don't want that, right? And I agree with Madam Mayor, we're talking about other residential areas all around him that, so even if it's 3, I don't know what that number is, and I think that's something that, we can sit around here, and I think Melanie mentioned it earlier, it's not something we can decide here tonight, but I think that's something we're gonna have to sit and decide that if we're gonna let him have a tourist commercial, and he truly is wanting to do a tourist commercial with boating or a restaurant or whatever it is, then let's allow the tourism and the commercial to happen. But if we limit it at one, again, to me, that's just a way for him to circumvent, and I don't believe that's his intention unless that's what it was, right?
Yeah, I just want to add, he's got the 2 trailer lots too. So there'll be the 2 trailers plus the cabin plus the current residence. So it's not just the cabin and forget the trailers. I think.
And until we know the septic capacity of the entire lot, we're a little bit premature in limiting the numbers until we know what the numbers could be. And then, of course, even if it allowed something more than what you think would be appropriate, given the residences on either side, and that's where, I like the site plan control agreements because it does give a little bit of flexibility moving forward, but still gives the municipality the ultimate control of what can happen on the site. So even if the septic capacity comes back and says, sure, no problem, we can put 20 cabins on the site, you may not feel that that's appropriate given the neighboring uses. And therefore, I think through site plan control, once we know that, once he's ready, like an amendment to an agreement is not as onerous a process as coming back and having to come back through the entire zoning process every time and say, okay, well, we've got this special zone, but now we would like this special zone. And well, now, this is going well. We'd like to build another cabin. So we'd now like to make special zone 3 or whatever. Through site plan control, that can be just handled that way with the new agreement registered on title superseding the previous ones.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Goodrich, with due respect, a site plan control agreement is fine, but we're sitting at this table and we don't know what we're agreeing to. Agreeing to site plan, an open-ended site plan control agreement so if he were to come in for an application for a comfort inn on the property, is that something, this committee wants to entertain? What I was suggesting is limiting some of the higher intensity uses just to take those off the table as potentials and leaving, things like housekeeping cabins and whatnot, which would be obviously limited by the septic capacity as you'd indicated. So that was the point of my, sorry, maybe I wasn't clear. I was not thinking of making a decision as to what could be there, but more as to what couldn't be there.
Could you read off? Could you read off what you don't want there?
Well, it's not up to me.
Well,
I
no,
would
but
just,
what do you suggest?
um,
Hotel, motel,
restaurant.
why restaurant?
And I think that the mayor has a question.
Okay,
Go ahead.
so I'd be more comfortable with this whole thing if we were looking at an application to amend the zoning, if the proponent was coming with an actual plan of what he wanted to do to commercially develop this property. Right now, the ask to change it to a commercial zone seems to be only to allow him to build the accessory dwelling that he wanted to build on the shoreline residential. It is with no solid plan of a commercial development. It's of no numbers or what he wants to do or how he wants to do it. So we're being asked to imagine what might be a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, which gives very little security to the neighboring properties. If an application comes to change that zoning, I would expect there to be a plan that outlines what kind of business it is going to be running there, what kind of commercial enterprise. So then this committee can actually look at the facts as to whether it's appropriate for the location, the size of the lot and everything. So I think right now we're getting hung up because there is no plan. The plan right now is to build a second accessory dwelling, which is not permitted in the current zone. That's it. And so in order to get around the restrictions on building the second accessory dwelling, which he would like to build, he's proposing to change it to tourism. But we don't have any idea of what that looks like. And as I say, when there's residential properties on either side, and there's impact to neighbors, and there's no definition of what that project looks like, it's really hard to kind of come in and support that application because there's too many questions. It's like putting the cart before the horse. And that's where I'm really uncomfortable with this decision. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, the only thing I could say to that is, as he has also pointed out, he is trying to promote it for the trailers. So it's not just the secondary dwelling unit. He does have that other component to it already as well. We've also spoken about putting in tourist cabins as well, but he's limited means. He wants to start with this. He wants the ability to be able to expand. And any of the existing tourist commercial operations that are in existence right now can expand without any control, really, other than the septic capacity of their lots. And all of them have residential properties right abutting them also. So I don't think it's really that big of an ask, and knowing that it's a smaller property to begin with, we're not dealing with a 10 or 100 acre parcel. We are dealing with a parcel that will have limited capacity for development. And by allowing him to phase that development in, I think is prudent, and I think it allows him to proceed at a pace that he can afford as it becomes available to him. And once again, sorry, I know Mel doesn't like it so much, but site plan control does regulate and does give the municipality. Like I say, none of the other tourist commercial operators up and down that strip right now are under site plan control. So as long as they meet the zone category, as long as they meet the building code, if one of them comes in to put a hotel on the property, meets the zone category, meets the zoning, if it or meets the building code, if they can prove that the septic is there, they can build it. Right now, we're willing to take those higher end uses off, which is fine. That's not the intent. The property wouldn't support it in any event. So, but I still think on a limited scale, suitable to the size of the property, this is a good application.
Okay, well, we don't have a site plan, right? You were saying?
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, I believe that, that the mayor had indicated that, you know, we don't have a lot of information and, you know, the committee can make a decision here and now, or request the consultant to bring more information. It's entirely, or call it to a vote, which, as you please.
That's what I was gonna ask. We can call it to a vote, and also we can ask to defer or send it to council. Right, in this,
Well, we would send it to council. It's going to council in any
Council
event,
anyways.
whether it goes with a recommendation to deny or a recommendation to promote. It has to go to council in any event.
okay. Do we, I'll call it to a vote. Anybody in favor? No? Anybody against?
Sorry.
No, sorry.
Sorry. Defeated? Sorry,
I
I'm
missed,
confused.
I missed what we're voting on, sorry.
Okay,
The motion as it was read.
okay, yeah, so I'll call it to a vote if we keep the application, if we're going as a commercial tourist or not. Because if we go against, then it'll be defeated.
So are we voting for their request to zone to C3?
Yes.
Yes,
No,
Or
it's C3 exemptions. Is the motion not read as an exemption zone?
No, I have to read the motion as to what they applied for.
Okay.
My recommendation was to make it an exception zone.
and
Could we ask to get a site plan so that we know exactly what Monsieur Larcher's intentions are?
yeah,
And
okay.
then it would be easier for us to.
If this committee wants to defer and get additional information, it's certainly possible.
Well, I'd like to know exactly what his intentions are with the property. That way the neighbors would know at the same time. And at least for us as this planning committee, we know exactly what we're actually willing to accept or propose. At least we have an idea exactly what his plans are in regards to tourist commercial.
And that I agree 100%. And that's, I think, what Madam Mayor, we were getting at. Again, like I said, I'm not opposed to it. However, if we're able to get his intent, if we're able to get his plans, however, with that plan, if we're able to also get information from, not the Ministry of Natural Resource, but
Conservation.
the conservation, that yes, you know, he's able to support 4 additional cabins. Yes, he's able to support 10 trailers or 6 or whatever. If we can have that as a committee, I'd be more than happy to support his recommendation to tourism and commercial. But right now, again, like, we're hanging, right? We're left hanging on what is it exactly that he wants to do? And I mean, I don't even dispute with having a restaurant there. I know we had mentioned not having, and like Don said, why not a restaurant? If you have all those tourism there and they build a small restaurant, even better. But I think we need to know as a committee what his intentions are. Yes, there's a sign there, and the sign there says trailers. Whose trailers? Are they family members? Are they going to be rentals? What is it going to be? And I think that's Councillor Gagne's point is dead on. I think we'd have to defer and get additional information.
So if we're going to defer, I'll need a motion to defer the application. So Roxanne,
Seconder,
the seconder, Dan.
so call the deferral to a vote.
Okay, we'll call the deferral to a vote. Everybody in favor to defer? Okay. Had 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Okay, so So the matter is deferred until no further discussion. The matter is deferred to the next planning advisory committee meeting.
All right, thanks very much.
And my second item,
We almost shouldn't even.
it's okay. It's okay. Give everybody more time to read it.
Yeah, because the other's a short-term rental.
Yes, yes, and I thought we'd have a little bit more time to discuss it.
Can we ask questions though?
Sure.
I can't see the Annex C. It's not in the package. It's just because there's no cost recommendations.
Yeah, I don't have
You don't have nothing?
no,
Okay.
as I indicated in my report, I haven't even sat down with financial controls
Okay,
and looked at it. I didn't want to do that until there was at least an agreement in principle as to what we're going to do so that we can then figure out what it's going to cost us to enforce.
and I imagine like other municipalities already have this in place?
Some do,
Yeah,
yes.
okay, okay. Perfect, thank you. No more questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
I just, I know it's short, but just quickly, I don't know if everybody had a chance to read it. Mr. Seguin saying no. This is the mayor will remember, this came before, this was brought up by the prior committee. It kind of got left on the table. It was incomplete and we had a request to bring it back. So like I said in my report, this is a draft, this is a first cut. I was mostly just kind of looking for direction to move forward with actually carrying out the public consultation, which would involve
Do you have to redo the public consultation because you did have public consultation for it already? And
We
it was,
did.
it was a year and a half.
It was
ago
a year
now.
and a half. I don't think it would be fair to, because at the time there was no actual short-term rental bylaw on the table to, it was more of a should we or shouldn't we?
And it actually started with amendments to the zoning bylaw.
Yes,
And then somebody
Kind
said
of
until we
evolved.
regulate short-term rentals, we
Exactly.
shouldn't.
it evolved. So, I think that probably it would be prudent to have a standalone consultation. And I was proposing one public meeting as well as a portal for comments. So that, and I was thinking, instead of just having kind of open, do you want a bylaw or not? I was thinking perhaps it might be, because I think the council has already spoken through the term plan that they want a bylaw. So it's not a will we or won't we. They want a bylaw, it's just a matter of what it's going to look like. So my thought was to ask specific questions in the consultation to get direction, which the main things are: where should these be? How many people should be allowed? The kind of the biggies, so that we get an idea how many, should be permitted in West Nipissing, or, should there be a limit on numbers? In the bylaw, actually, I've broken it down into 3 classes of short-term rentals. There's sort of the full-on, I buy it and that's all I do with it is rent it. And then there's the ones where you own it and you rent it out you use it, but you also rent it out for a couple of weeks or a month in the summer or whatever. That's kind of more like home sharing. And each one has specificity as to where it's allowed. And I was proposing that the full-on just rentals be only in commercial zones and not in residential zones. And the ones that are part owner occupied, part short-term rental could be in the residential zones, but there's a maximum number of days. In any event, all of them have to be registered. Everybody would have to be registered. And I understand through my consultation that we can actually provide our bylaws to the platforms like VRBO and Airbnb, and they won't take listings if they can't prove that they're registered. So, kind of like a belt and suspenders kind of thing. So anyways, I know we're short on time. Committee of Adjustment starts shortly, but
But I just want to add, sorry to interrupt, but I did go through it and it's not readable, but it's easy to understand and it's straightforward. And like your point things that if you after three, then, you know, there's a, you know, it's not just a slap on the hand, but
You're
you're,
out.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
more restriction and also
To
the
merit
limits and
system.
the, no, I really like the,
The province wants us, is moving us to more towards plain language bylaws and things that make, you know, are simple to understand. I took from a variety, and I also took from the comments from the previous planning session that was, because we did have comments from different private roads, septic systems,
and it's
limiting
clear.
the numbers
It's
of people, because I know that the big complaint we've got is parties, people who rent them out for big parties, like bachelor parties or you know, things like of that nature where, you know, it's a bunch of people just getting together for the purpose of a
Yeah.
party. And I think by limiting the numbers of people permitted, now, obviously, they might try, but, you know, with a bylaw in place, we at least have an enforcement and it goes against the owner.
I saw that in the bylaw or the draft. How long do you think it's gonna take you guys to put this in place? Because there's a lot of work that's gonna go into this to start, but also to
I
relicense like on a yearly basis.
Yeah,
also.
I talked to other municipalities about how they're doing that, and they're going about it slowly. You know, they recognize that implementation takes time. It takes time for people to get wrapped around it. So they've mostly been working with, I asked one municipality who recently, I said, well, how many licenses do you have? He said, 4. I said, and how many listed properties do you see on the social media? He said, about 150. So, you know, it's a process. We'd have to publicize it, share it on social media. We'd council when it eventually would have to say, you know, this is the drop dead date. You know, it's, I don't know, May 31st, 2024. Everybody has to be licensed because we have to give people time to get their act together and, you know, come in and register, and we have to get forms and we have to decide who's responsible for what. And, you know, I think once we get application forms, but because each one requires an inspection by the building official and by the fire department, so it's a process.
Okay, thank you.
What's the next step?
I guess unless you would want to bring this back to the
Bring
next
it
meeting and
again.
talk about some more before we go to public?
I would, my opinion would be just to go to public consultation. I think that we're pretty clear on it, and the public consultation will also help to guide us a little bit better.
Nothing in the document that jumped out as terrible. I didn't miss any of that. I tried to,
very.
I've been writing stuff down for a couple of years.
I will go through the document, and if there's anything that jumps out, I will bring it to our next,
Thank you.
15 minutes early, and I'll ask some more questions.
It is in draft too, but
Yeah.
I think you've got.
Well, and if by having at least something to jump off of, at least when we, you know, municipality is undertaking consultation, this is at least they've got something to comment on.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's not just an open-ended.
So, Mr. Chair, if we can, I'd like to move to consultation just to speed up the process. And then we can comment our next meeting. And if we can do the consultations.
So
Within
do
a
you want
month or
to
two,
move
or-
forward with having the public meeting? Yeah, okay. And I'd like to, I think we should do it as a standalone public meeting for that
We cannot
purpose.
have another meeting after.
No, we cannot have another meeting after. So I'll look at dates. I know we're moving into budget and other things, so would this committee like me to bring it back to the next council meeting to brief the council on the direction of this committee? Just,
We don't need council approval to start public.
no, I just was thinking to update council just in case they get phone calls.
Yeah, we can do that at this
Yeah,
meeting.
just-
Sorry, planning is on for next Tuesday's meeting.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking, just give a quick update. Okay, perfect. So we can adjourn this. It is moved by Danielle Seguin and seconded by Roxanne Louis. Be resolved that the West Nipissing Planning Advisory Committee meeting held on September the 12th, 2023 be adjourned.
Everybody in favor? Carried.
It's probably see me,
What date?
Would be the second Tuesday in October, which I think would be the third, so the 10th.
10?
I will be absent.
You will be absent, okay?
No cell zone.
No cell zone, lucky you.
It's hunting season.
Everyone else available on the
Deer Falls.
10th of September, or 10th of October,
Deer
pardon me?
Falls or Deer Falls?
Here.
When are you taking
Deer,
it?
as
I
in-
haven't been there yet.
Oh, eh?
It's 40 kilometers south of the most northern traffic
We're
stop.
good for October 10?
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect.
Kilometers north of the,
Thank you for the
Southeast.
oh, okay. Oh,
Have a
so
good
like
evening.
officially the
Thank you.
middle of nowhere.
Last quarter was very.
No, I'll leave this.
TV back on, hold on.
Oh,
Oh.
you don't have one?
Sorry, guys.
Committee of adjustment? Need 2.
And you got your pieces of paper.
Don't give them technology.
Are we live?
We're live.
Are we live on audio too?
We are,
Yeah,
Okay, never
just
mind.
this past second.
we're good to go.
There's only Dawn out in the movie land.
Only Don, okay. Welcome to the Committee of Adjustment. This is a quasi judicial forum, which means that any decision that is made becomes law or final after the appeal period, okay? So to start off, do we have any declaration of pecuniary interest? Okay, hearing none.
It is moved by Campbell Anderson and seconded by Jonathan S. Sandiford. Be it resolved that the agenda for the West Nipissing Committee of Adjustment meeting held on September the 12th, 2023 be adopted as presented.
Everybody in favor for the the agenda? For the agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's committee, okay. Everybody in favor? Carried. Sorry. Okay, and then the adoption of the minutes.
It is moved by Campbell Anderson and seconded by Jonathan Sandiford. Be it resolved that the minutes of the West Nipissing Committee of Adjustment meeting held on July the 13th, 2023 be adopted as presented.
Everybody had a chance to read it? No changes to the minutes? Okay, I'll bring it to the vote. Everybody in favor? Carried. Okay, we're moving on to the applications. C-18-23, Nicole and Ida, go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This application, it's a little mostly driven by geography. This actually came in earlier in the spring, and there's been a lot of conversation with the Public Works manager and the landowners. So they own this whole big lot on Cotton Road. And the intention, they have a cottage on the easterly side of the retained lands. There's a really, really big hill on the property, and there's also a very large municipal drain which literally transects the property, which accounts for that skewed lot line on the west boundary, that slanted lot line. Oh, yes, I will pull it up in a second. When I let Mr.
What's his name?
Man, oh man, I've known him since he was 4 and I can't remember his name. Mr. MacArthur, Mr. Stephen MacArthur. He will answer any questions you have. I'm just giving a quick preamble. So what the intention is here is to take out a lot of 2.79 hectares. And you'll see on the water's edge, they own a very small piece of shoreline in the front of their lot. And what is intended is to have the portion shown in red will go with the severed land, with the blue stays with the retained lands.
They all have access to the water.
That's correct, and I am proposing in my conditions that a restrictive covenant pursuant to section 118 of the Planning Act be registered, just to make sure that those little pieces stay with the land and that they don't get lost or that there's no understanding that they're a separate lot. They belong to the property on the opposite side of the road. In this case, a Cotton Road at this location had been assumed by the municipality, so it is owned by the municipality at that location. So that road does create a natural severance.
Okay, do we have any questions from our panel?
Mr. MacArthur, anything
Mr.
further
MacArthur?
anything further to add?
Thank you, Ms. Walsh.
Ms. Walsh. I haven't been Miss Walsh. I haven't been Miss Walsh for about 35 years.
You deserve that for forgetting my
Since he
name.
was 4 years old.
Good evening, committee members. The first time here. My name is Steve MacArthur. I am a contract planner with Tulloch Geomatics Inc. And full disclosure, I'm coming into this file late, but the planner did an excellent job of explaining the back and forth. The applicants, our clients, made the application in March. There was a lot of work done behind the scenes, as Melanie has described. The municipal drain, we had the reason for the unusual lot is to accommodate the fact that the property is zoned rural, but there's also a hazard lands portion for the municipal drain. The pieces and I believe they have the site plan, I don't know if yours is a colored version, but the 2 pieces of the severed area at the water's edge were caught as a result of that back and forth. And section 118 will be completed to make sure that they are transferred or bound to the full parcels. Our clients simply would like to sever off this lot to allow their son to build a home on the property. There is a sufficient building envelope. We have gone back and forth with the Public Works, your roads people about the entrances, and there's been some discussion and negotiation there as well. The existing frame shed and trailer are going to be removed, of course, from the property prior to the construction. And there's been a redesign at the north end of this property as well to accommodate more of a access to what would be the west side of the property. So lots of work behind the scenes to try and make it fit, make it work. I believe, hopefully we're there this evening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about it if you had any.
Okay. Madam Mayor?
On the severed area, will that retain an RU zoning, or will it go to short, like, is it considered shoreline residential, or is it above the size threshold?
Again, that's what the size of the severed lot is.
2.79.
0.794.
No, typically anything
Is it
under,
5
it would have to, it probably should go to shoreline residential, although it's on the backside of the road. Typically, when a lot comes out of a rural zone, and it's less than the 4 hectares, which is the rural threshold, it then, under our bylaw, it stays rural, but its accessory uses are limited to the rural residential zone. So they can't have a farm so you can just have the same things as rural residential. It's a note in the table
Okay,
of the
but
bylaw.
what's the width of a road?
At that
66.
66, well, the actual road or how much we own?
How much you own?
The full 66 feet.
Okay, so in this case, the 66 feet would go up. I'm just thinking about, it kind of is shoreline residential, so would it have the same, when he goes to build, would it have the same property setbacks from the waterfront, no matter which zone it's in?
Well, because the property's not on the water, like the building's not on the water, it's on the road, they would actually have a 15-meter setback.
Which is what it is from water.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, 18 from water,
Okay.
but this would be 15
Okay,
from
plus
the
the road.
road, not from
Okay.
the water.
That's fine, just,
It would be measured from the lot line on the north side of the road, not the water.
And there's no opportunity or capacity to build at the water's edge there, of course.
and the full frontage is over 60 meters anyway, right?
Yes.
Yeah, 60, 64 and change.
It's a very interesting shape.
And actually, I pulled up the aerial and I'll share it, but I'm not entirely sure that it's going to help because it's mostly just the bush.
Yeah, the internet's not working for us.
Yeah.
Just-
So this is actually the municipal drain. You can see coming through and it comes right down here through the property. It actually comes out the side of the driveway in front of this house, which is the small lot that's carved out of the west side. And as Mr. MacArthur was indicating, they currently have an entrance over here. And you'll see this property is really, really challenging geographically. It's a ton of rock. They have very limited areas that they can actually use on the property between the drain and the rock. So they do have a small cleared area over here, which the Public Works Manager has conceded to allow them to retain this entrance because they simply don't have any space on their own property to store anything. Because like I said, the property is this is their little camp down in here. And like I said, and the reason for the thing around the back of the property is because they didn't want to split the property completely because then that other side wouldn't have sufficient frontage. So that's why the retained lands wrap around.
Any other questions on the,
Oh, I see.
on the application?
But physically, you can't get from one side of that property to the other due to the depth of the drain. So if you don't have the entrance on the west boundary, you can't get up to that side of the property.
The drain is this line here, so that's why.
Yeah, and you'll see it goes all the way up.
One lot line really follows the drain on the
Yeah, on the
West side?
The
Yeah.
diagonal.
Yes.
diagonal and then
What-
straight north.
What's the purpose of the little, is that the
It's-
hazard land?
It was, yeah, that's the hazard designation for the municipal drain.
What cut out?
On the right-hand side, there's that's 15 by 100
meters, yes.
on the right-hand side of the severed property.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay.
I think it's to go around this swampy area right here.
Correct. Yes,
can find, I can
Usually
find.
I tell you I like straight lines, but I understand this.
This was a bit of a challenging because of that, like I said, it's a very challenging property geographically.
Mm-hmm.
And the part one plan 36R11077, that's just a separately owned property.
Correct.
That's not, doesn't have anything to do with this file.
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from our panel? No? Okay, I'll bring it to a vote. Everybody in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, we And just for council said, I'm just going to introduce you, Steve, as you are right now.
Yeah.
Mr. MacArthur currently is our representative, our impact representative. Until the
where I met you.
Until the 29th of this month.
What's bothering you was the.
Yeah, it
Still
was.
employed by Impact. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance for him to come and explain all the lovely things about assessment to
We
us,
did,
but
actually, we did back in April.
I missed that one. I was at Good Rose.
That's right. We did. I did get to meet Council.
Yes.
so, but now he's moving on to, going back to the big bad private sector.
Yes.
So
So we'll
as
see
a
you at-
planner, we'll be seeing you anyway.
Yes, probably more than as an assessment guy, so there.
Well,
Yeah.
congratulations. We look
Thank
forward
you.
to it.
Thanks.
Okay, we're gonna move on to number 2, C4423 Palcarmi.
It is moved, oh, that's the wrong app. Forgot to put the rest of them back in order. It is moved by Campbell Anderson and seconded by Jonathan Sandiford. Be it resolved that the consent application made by Paul Cormier for the creation of a new lot at WB 3546 in the municipality of West Nipissing is approved on the following conditions. That a reference plan be prepared and deposited in the land registry office and a copy of the new survey be filed with the municipality. Confirmation that the taxes be paid, that conditions be met before September 13th, 2025, and that a transfer deed be submitted to the secretary for the issuance of a certificate of consent. And further, that the minor variance application, the concurrent minor variance application 2023-05 also be approved.
Yeah, we're gonna
So-
bring it to the table that we also have a minor variance on
And
that same.
with your indulgence, Mr. Chair, I will present the two of them concurrently and we can vote on them just to jump it back and forth. So the concurrent minor variance is being brought as an application to reduce the minimum lot area. The lots being proposed here are each at one at an acre right on and the other one just a tiny bit over an acre. As indicated in my report, there is a language in our official plan and our zoning bylaw that does set the absolute minimum at 1 acre, provided that technical studies have been provided. The owner has provided a letter from the North Bay Madero Conservation Authority who have carried out an inspection of the property. So I'll just read the minor variance application and move to discussion. It is moved by Roxanne Louis and second by Kathleen Rochon. That is not the right resolution, my apologies. Same people. It is the decision of the Committee of Adjustment to approve the minor variance application made by Paul Cormier to reduce the lot area from 1 hectare to 0.4 of a hectare for the following reasons. Meets the general intent and purpose of the official plan, meets the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, and the variants are considered desirable for the appropriate development of the property. Discussion.
Discussion. You have any questions?
You have anything to add, Mr. Good?
I just want to say now that my good friend Mr. MacArthur has left, how nice it is being the one here tonight, putting forward nice straight lines.
Yeah.
The other way around. No, if anyone has any specific questions, be happy to answer.
Okay, Madam Kathleen?
Okay, there is kind of a location map there, but it'd be really useful if I could visualize this with some kind of like marker that made sense to me as far as.
Give me a second and I'll pull it up.
Start.
So this is Keystone.
Okay.
You come through.
Yeah.
That's right here. Okay. And there's a cabin there.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming it's this portion.
Okay, thank you.
But you're looking at where is it?
It's in Hunter's Bay.
Oh, I'm just gonna share the screen.
Yeah.
Just, it's hard to see, but the property is right here on this little point.
Okay.
You know, somebody know the river, the river, the lake better than I do to know to set where we are. We're in the French.
Yeah, it's in the
Yes,
French River.
we're in the French.
Right there.
Okay. Thank you. It's helpful.
So the idea for the severance hall, is it to sell the other half of the property?
I believe it's for his son, that they want to build another family cottage on that side of the island.
Okay.
Just for reference purposes, you'll see that when I turn off the aerial, this property is 100% surrounded by ground. There are no abutting property. There's no abutting lands.
There you go.
The next closest, and the next closest island would be this one here, and it's hard to tell, but these are the patented lands on that island. The bulk of that island too is also crown.
So I have a question, and this is a more philosophical question. When we look at the official plan says that new lots should be created, should be 1 hectare or over. And then it does allow some flexibility for those types of variances and stuff like that. But, from 1 hectare to 0.4 hectares is a big thing. So in this case, we're dealing with a lot, again, that's already just under the 1 hectare. And we're being asked to now create 2 lots that are far smaller than what the recommended lot size is for shoreline residential. And those recommendations are made to protect and preserve the environment and make sure we're not overpopulating. So, where I understand that there is a minimum threshold, an application that has 2 lots that are right at that minimum threshold kind of makes me bristle a little because they're small. It's much smaller than what the intent of the zoning bylaw, the official plan is, even though it's permissible, they're still very small. So I don't know who can answer that question, like at what point do we recommend going that small and what point don't we? Who do we say yes to and who do we say no? Because if anybody can come and get a severance that creates 2 lots at 0.4 hectares, then we might as well just make the minimum size of the lots 0.4 hectares, right?
Perhaps I can give a little bit of historical context to this. The 0.4 hectares was always the standard lot size for years and years and years. In the official plan back, I believe in 2013, the province was pushing to increase the lot size to 1 hectare. Why, we're not really sure, but it was just a nice even number. Nothing scientific ever goes into anything in planning, I find. Sorry, and I'm admitting that, but usually it's constrained by 1 hectare is a nice easy number. That's what we'll accept as the minimum lot size. The municipality appealed their own official plan to the Ontario Municipal Board at the time because they were pushing towards the smaller lot size, the 1 acre size as being the requirement. And it was settled. It didn't really come before the full board and a full hearing. And I'm sure Ms. Descharnes can correct me on this, but it was my understanding that it was a settlement between Ministry of Municipal Affairs and the municipality. The official plans are supposed to reflect the will of the local people. That's the whole point of having your own granting authorities and the delegated authority from the province, but subject to some provincial standards. So as a settlement, the ministry agreed to allow the lot sizes to be reduced to the 1 hectare, to the 1 acre size, the 0.4 of a hectare, but only if they could be supported with the studies saying that it wouldn't have an impact on the environment. So in this case, the client, we did hire the Conservation Authority to attend on site to make sure that there were no environmental concerns with having the smaller lot size. And that's kind of the deciding factor, is the smaller lot size is fine as long as someone is willing to sign off that it will be suitable for the septic, that there won't be an impact on the environment. And in this case, it was the Conservation Authority that signed off on this. And I think Mel's probably got a couple of corrections.
No, I just actually, I was going to explain all that. Mr. Goodrich was good enough to. I was going to explain the history of how that came to be, Madam Mayor. And yes, the council of the day did not want the larger lot size. It was the ministry who was pushing for it. As he'd said, the council appealed its own official plan, and it took. I started here in 2008. It was finally adopted. It was settled in 2011. 3 years of wrangling with the ministry to have the settlement that we did, that was reached, which does allow that flexibility that you mentioned. So, yeah, that's where it is.
Just as an added to that as well, at the same time that Municipal Affairs was pushing for the 1 hectare lot, the Ministry of Natural Resources was preparing cottage subdivisions based on 1 acre sizes and 150 feet of frontage rather than the 200 feet that the municipality has. So one government agency was saying, no, we must go big. And the other government agency that was creating lots was creating them at a much smaller size. So there was a bit of a dichotomy there as well within the ministry itself. With what the municipality has, we have the 200-foot frontage, the 60 meter, plus the 1 acre of size, 0.4 of a hectare, as long as it can be supported.
Question for you, Paul. Is this road access or boat access only?
Boat access and helicopter.
So there's no way
Fly
you
in,
can
it's-
drive to that property.
Not at all.
So it's limited to what they can do anyways.
I just have one other question
Go
that
ahead.
I'd like to tie back. So earlier this year, this committee did not, but planning committee did deal with the subdivision on Browns Island. And you were the consultant for that project as well. And at that time, that owner wanted to go down just a little, what I would consider. My problem is what's minor, right? So is minor cutting the recommended in half, or is minor like 0.8? So the original on Browns Island was, he was thinking about 0.9 hectare lots, and the determination was to pull back from that and to not do the variance because of the environmental sensitivity of that area and also the input from the residents and neighbors and the French Rivers Cottagers Association and such. So, I think that's my concern, is that I like consistency. And so I'm always afraid when we go to these like super small lots and that then becomes the new norm. Like Browns Island didn't do it, even on what would have been minor. And so I don't know, just interesting. You're starting not to like me as mayor.
Oh, no, that happened long ago. No, the only point I would make is that the 1 acre size, particularly in this particular instance too, it's surrounded by Crown land.
Yeah.
So there really is no impact on any other property owners in close proximity. I did the field survey with one of my staff members on this one personally. I usually don't get out anymore, but this was one that was a training exercise for my staff. But it was nice to see it personally as well. But the 1 acre size, like I say, has traditionally been the go-to size of lot in the province. And it's only been very recently that they've upped that to the 2.5 acre, or the 1 hectare size. Many municipalities do have smaller lot sizes. Many have gone to a 2 acre or a 0.8 hectare is also very common throughout the northeastern region. So the 1 hectare it's an arbitrary number. Like I say, it was picked out. I don't know what, I would be willing to bet there was absolutely no science that went into the 1 hectare.
Thank you.
We quietly spoke about, because I'm not too educated on septic systems. So class 4F septic system is a small septic tank, I'm guessing. So they've got approval from the Conservation Authority for the initial install. What are they doing for maintenance? Is that all by boat as well? Like,
Yep.
to pump it out?
Yeah, the pump outs are by barge.
Okay, cool. All right.
And quite often, depending where the septic is, they'll pump out into a tank. One of those big, almost, they look like those water, I hate to say it as a water jug, but you know what I mean, with the frame around them. And then they're hauled out by either ATV or a small tractor, and they're brought back to the barge. Some of the barges that do it specifically have a hollow hull in them. And the septic is just put down, or the effluent is put into the hull of the barge and then pumped out once they get back to the docking facility. And then the honey wagons take it from there to wherever it gets distributed.
Okay. Any other questions? I think because of they have the approval already, and that there is no other budding lands that could deter from this application. I'd be for it, but it'll be up to the panel. If you don't have any more questions, I'll bring it to a vote. Is anybody in favor? Okay.
Thank you.
Carried. Okay, number 3, we'll move C-50-23, Jean Paquette Yves Roy.
That was just for the minor variance, do we not, or was that approval on both the
On both.
consent and the minor variance?
I had asked for,
For both?
We
Yeah.
did for both.
Okay, that's fine,
Yeah.
I thought we still had to do one more, like. Yeah.
okay, onward and upward. Next item on the agenda, yes,
Yes,
yes.
C-50, Jean Paquette Yves
Yes, it
Roy.
is moved by Jonathan Sandiford and seconded by Campbell Anderson. Be it resolved that consent application made by Eve and Zian Paquette for the creation of a new lot at 13395 Highway 64 in Field in the municipality of West Nipissing is approved on the following conditions. That a reference plan is prepared and deposited in the land registry office. That confirmation that the taxes be paid to date. The conditions be met before September 13th, 2025. That a transfer deed be submitted to the municipality, and that an entrance permit be obtained from the Ministry of Transportation, as the property is located on a provincial highway. Let's go down here. Through you, Mr. Chair, this is a fairly straightforward application. One new lot, lot fronts on Highway 64, has the minimum amount of frontage and lot area for the rural zone. That's about it.
They have the cutout on the river. Does that go with that property?
That's the intention, is that they will own that, and maybe one of the conditions would be that there's a section 118 to attach the two pieces together.
I apologize, I did not see that until this very moment. I was,
It's right across.
yeah, and I did,
Actually seen the property get cleared
my
up, so
deepest apologies,
knew it.
yes.
Obvious, and, sorry, Mel,
Yeah.
and because it's, that's just to access the river on the other side, and obviously too small to build anything on there, right? So
That one is too small. It's 41 meters on the skew, so when you'll take back the 18 meters, the setback from the highway, you're not left with a very big cabin after that. So
Okay.
So I would
we
propose,
intended to be together with the adults.
I would propose that the conditions be amended to include a section 118 covenant that that little piece stays with the lot and can't be, because it is naturally severed by the highway. The intent would be to ensure that it isn't ever construed as a standalone lot.
Is that gonna be sold as well? That one? Or,
The piece on the river.
no, like the entire severed section?
Oh, the entire severed section would be, and the sketch does show them as severed, both of them as being part of the severed one. So the intention was that they go together.
It's gonna be sold, why didn't they get into it first? Why doesn't the buyer get that?
They just have to have confirmation that one can be obtained.
Okay.
Not, they don't have to get the permit. The MTO has to conduct an inspection to ensure that it can be, they can get a one at that location.
Kathleen?
Who owns or it is the abutting riverfront property shown as, I don't know, 4 9s or something, whatever, owned by the same property? Yes?
Yes.
So, and that is part of the retained? So the other little piece of land that is beside the shoreline?
Oh, that's owned by the one immediately abutting is owned by OPG, Ontario Power Generation.
Okay.
They acquired it because of the flooding of the river.
Oh, okay. So the retained area does not cross the highway?
That's
They're
correct.
selling the only access that they have, or they're including the only access they have to the river as part of the
Well,
severance?
full
No.
disclosure, they also.
I'm sorry. Hi, Don.
Sorry.
No.
They also own the piece over on this side also, but it's totally naturally severed. It is large enough to build upon should they choose to. Now it is constrained, but it is right now all part of the same property.
I believe that's in the floodplain though. Is it not?
Yeah, and that
So it
could
wouldn't
limit
be-
its viability for anything other than a dock.
Yeah, it's not.
Over here?
Sorry.
It has
Oh,
nothing
wow.
to do with this application anyways.
No, I know. I just wanted to understand how that split was happening because it's not a straight line.
And while I'm here, I just want to point out again the nice straight lines, 2 in a row.
Yes.
This committee will, over time, you'll see that when we are dealing with properties in the townships of Field and Grant, there'll be a lot of little funny cutouts. Ontario Power Generation owns vast amounts of lands out there and they're all kind of irregular shaped for flooding rights. So this I have added an additional condition to this that a restrictive covenant be registered on title to ensure that the lands on the north side of the highway are not sold independent of the severed lands.
All right. Any other questions on this application? No? Hearing none, I'll bring it to a vote. Everybody in favor? Carried. Okay. Number 4, C-51-23, Henry Penner.
Mr. Chair, application C-53 and C-52 are related applications.
Oh,
So
you're right.
with your indulgence, I would present the two of them together because they don't make sense. Well,
With
they
Henry
do.
and Emma.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct. That is correct.
Number 4, number 5.
That is correct. So what is being proposed in this application? I'm gonna see if I can get this full screen so that I can see the whole thing. We do that.
Bottom right, beside your Zoom scrolling thing?
Yeah.
To the very left of it? To the left? Yeah, yeah, right there.
Look at that. I'm so glad you're on the page.
Dickie's there.
Yes, indeed. So this property, we've seen this property before at this table. This property is owned by Mr. Schwartzentruber. Mr. Schwartzentruber has previously severed 2 lots out of the property on the left and 2 lots out of the property on the right. The one in the center, sort of on the loop of the road, it's a pre-existing lot from before. What is being proposed here is this severed one does not leave this retained lands on the west side with sufficient frontage. So in order to do this, what is being proposed is to add this yellow strip from the east half to the west half, and that will give these retained lands over here on the west half sufficient frontage as a standalone lot, because they have to have 60 meters of frontage. They have to have 200 feet of frontage in order to be a viable lot. And by adding this yellow piece to the west half, that will leave these retained lands sufficient property, and then permit this severed one. The retained lands will have enough frontage.
Straightforward.
That 60 meters has to be contiguous,
It is preferred.
because if you add the right and the left,
I
it's fine.
Shh, don't tell Dawn that, because she and I had this. It is preferred that it be contiguous, because the intent is that it makes the lot buildable.
Yeah.
And, you know, 30 meters here and 30 meters there kind of isn't as, it doesn't say that in the bylaw, but it is definitely preferred.
You want to add something, Don?
No, I'm just doing a, I got something stuck in my throat.
Okay. Any other questions from our panel? No? No.
So I will read the resolutions, because I
Okay.
forgot to do so.
Go ahead.
It is moved by Kathleen Rochon and seconded by Roxanne Louis that a consent application made by Henry Penner for a lot addition at Lafreniere Road in the West Nipissing Municipality is approved in the following conditions. Reference plan, property taxes paid, conditions met within 2 years. In this case, there is a municipal drain on the property, both the severed and the retained, and the owner will be required to pay for a report to reapportion the assessment on the municipal drain, and that a PIN consolidation and be prepared to consolidate that long strip with the west half to which is being added. The other one, exactly the same conditions, save and except for the lot addition severance. The rest are, because that's a new lot.
Okay, we all understand what the two applications are?
So really, the second one should be first, because that's you're taking that piece from Emma.
That's correct, and that
And
is,
then after you take that piece from Emma, you're giving it to
yeah, and
him.
actually, the resolution, the new lot is conditional on the lot addition being approved.
Thank you.
So we would vote on the lot addition first, and then on the new lot.
Okay, so on the lot addition, everything's okay. On the lot addition, everybody in favor?
Yeah.
Okay, carried. And then the other one is the,
The new lot, that would, on the west half.
that's right, which makes it, everybody in favor on the second one?
Yeah.
Carried. Henry and Emma. Now we're going to number 6, C-53-23, Tyler Alston.
It is moved by Kathleen Rochon and seconded by Roxanne Louis. The consent application made by Tyler Alston for the creation of new lots at 105 Douglas Road in the municipality of West Nipissing is approved in the following conditions. The reference plan be prepared, property taxes be paid to date, the conditions be met before September 13th, 2025, that the transfer deed is submitted to the municipality, and that any portion of the municipally maintained and traveled road located on either the severed or retained lands at 10 meters from center line be conveyed to the municipality. Through you, Mr. Chair, this is a fairly straightforward application. What is being proposed here are 2 lots fronting on it. I know it shows Lemieux Road. I think that was one of the roads that got renamed at amalgamation and is now known as Douglas Road. It's in
Okay.
Faulkner. No?
Douglas Road is down at the
Douglas.
south.
Oh, he's got frontage on both ends.
Yes.
My bad. His address is on Douglas Road. The lots face on Lemieux Road.
Okay. So Lemieux is a legit road.
Yes.
Okay. That hasn't been changed.
No, not that one.
Okay, so that's a straightforward severance. 1 and 2, so he's asking for 2, adding 2 lots, right?
Yeah, they have, each have 70 meters of frontage and 142 meters of depth, both lot area, 1 hectare.
Okay. Any questions from the panel? No, it's straightforward. They have the right size and everything. I'll bring it to a vote. Everybody in favor? Carried. This one here.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're moving to number 7. Rabael Davidson, C5423.
It was moved by Roxanne Lee and seconded by Kathleen Rochon. Be it resolved that a consent application made by Robert Davidson and Richard Desjardins for the creation of a new lot at 15 LaBelle Road in the West Nipissing Municipality is approved in the following conditions. That a reference plan be prepared and deposited in the land registry office, and a copy of the new surveys filed with the municipality. That property taxes be paid to date, conditions be met before September 13th, 2025. Transfer deed be submitted to the municipality, municipally maintained road 10 meters from center line. And again, there is a drain on this property. It's the Duchesne drain, and there is condition for the apportionment of the assessment on the Duchesne drain. To be Mr. Chair, this property is at the corner of LaBelle and Golf Course Road. So what is being proposed is to sever out a lot which faces on the golf course side. They own on the corner. There's a little lot out of the corner, but they own the whole.
Yeah, there's a house built on that little lot on the corner.
Both
Any
severed.
questions?
Both severed and retained meet the lot area frontage
Yes.
requirements.
It's not straight line, Kathleen, but it's, there's a little jog, but easily done.
That's not my problem.
Yeah.
Well, we could have taken it from the other corner and made a skewed line, but
Yeah.
and it's hard to fence. Better to have the 90-degree corners.
All right. If there's no questions, I'll bring it to a vote. Everybody in favor? Carried. Okay,
That brings us to the end of.
what's the other? Certificate of validation.
Yes, we have a certificate of validation. This one is going to be a little bit complicated to explain. So I think this committee has never dealt with a certificate of validation. Certificate of validation is a hopefully seldom used tool under the Planning Act, which is used when there has been a violation in the past, which has existed and been carried on for a long time, but somebody realizes that, oh my goodness, that lot shouldn't have been sold without having got a consent application. In this case, what happened is this property is located on Tomaco Road, and the seller owned property. He owned the lot that he sold, but he also owned a large lot on the backside of the road. It was unknown at the time that there was a little corner of the large lot that crossed the road. So when he sold the smaller lot, he was unaware that there was this little triangle of abutting lands. So he sold the lot, and that's technically a Planning Act violation because he owned lands that were abutting the lot in blue that's shown on the sketch. So the little triangle, he wasn't even aware that he owned it. And it was only recently determined. And this particular application is to basically validate, because under the Planning Act, a Planning Act violation negates the transfer. It basically makes the transfer invalid. So these people, under planning law, don't own their property because their transfer is invalid. This will validate their transfer, enable them to proceed with the sale of the property and right the Planning Act mistake that was made way, way, way back.
There's no, like buildings on that
No,
property?
no,
Just
it's the bottom corner of the property across the road.
Okay. So it's not owned to part 1?
No, but the problem, it's owned by the other side of the road. That's the problem is because it's touching part 1, and the person who sold them the part 1 didn't know he owned that little triangle.
So who's inheriting the pink
The same property on the other side of the road, still.
Okay, so it doesn't come automatically to part one. Okay.
Now, had he known he owned it, he probably should have sold it with it at the time, but
Yeah.
So who's gonna own the little triangle?
the same guy that owns the backside of the road. His property just, it's on both sides.
It's not on this map.
Lot 10.
Well, it's lot 10, it's above,
Lot
it's
10.
a, it's a
Okay,
big, huge
okay.
180 acre parcel.
It just makes it legally his,
Well, it is legally his now.
But-
So is the yellow.
paper-wise.
So
So
before
figure-wise.
before the triangle was legally part of part one.
No, it was always part of the big. I knew this would be fun.
So they had sold part one way back.
The part
Not
one was a
knowing that-
standalone lot,
Okay.
okay? The part one was a standalone lot with a cottage on it. The person who owned the part one also owned the big lot on the back side of the road. They were in two different roll numbers, and he sold the cottage. But he didn't know that part of his property on the back side of the road was also on this side of the road and touching the little lot. He had no idea.
Okay.
So lot 10 crosses the road.
Yes,
That's one lot, has bits on either side.
that's correct.
Okay.
I understand, yeah.
And it's the little bit on the south side of the road that
So now,
created the Planning Act.
basically, this is just housekeeping.
Yeah, this is
You
how.
just gotta, you just
Well,
gotta
it
clean up
got-
some of the,
Well, in doing the title search, the lawyers for the buyer of the yellow lot found the Planning Act violation and brought it to the attention of the sellers, and that's why we're here, so they can complete their sale.
housekeeping. Everybody in favor with the
The certificate of validity,
certificate of
I will read the
validation?
resolution.
You didn't do that yet?
No. It is moved by Roxanne Louis and seconded by Kathleen Rochon. Whereas it has been determined that the property located at 525 Tomico Road in Crystal Falls is in violation of the Planning Act as a result of a transfer in 2003, at which time the vendor also owned abutting lands. And whereas Section 57 of the Planning Act authorizes the issuance of a validation certificate in order to correct the retained to certain violations of the Planning Act for parcels which are legally existing. Be it resolved that the validation certificate be issued for PIN number 490900233 being part of Lot 11 Concession 4, Part 1 on Plan 36R8506 in the Township of Grant.
Okay. Everybody in favor? Carried. Housekeeping, none.
Housekeeping is possible. And now,
Okay, now an adjournment?
Yes.
We have our,
we do. It is moved by Jonathan Sandiford and seconded by Campbell Anderson. Be it resolved that the Committee of Adjustment meeting held on September the 12th, 2023 adjourned.
everybody in favor? Now, and we're moving, our next committee meeting will be October 10th, correct?
Correct.
Tuesday, October 10th. Everybody is okay with that? Your schedules?